This is the Hanging Temple. Perched on a cliff in northern China, it has become one of the world's most mysterious landmarks. Every year, thousands of people travel here just to witness its strange design. Standing over 50 meters above the ground, it looks impossibly fragile. Yet, it has clung to this rock face for more than 1,500 years, surviving powerful storms and earthquakes. But lasting this long is only part of the mystery, because what's even stranger is that these support pillars can actually be removed, and the entire temple will still remain standing. So how is that possible? We modeled the entire thing and even worked with Chinese historians to uncover its rich history, its remarkable evolution across dynasties, and the ingenious engineering that has allowed it to survive against all odds. But before we can understand how the Hanging Temple works, we first need to understand why it was built in the first place. The 5th century was a time when 3 great traditions were reshaping northern China.
In these temples, Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism are represented. So China has no native religion.
Buddhism had arrived from India, bringing new concepts of the divine. Confucian principles guided social order and family life. And Taoist philosophy offered a path to harmony with nature.
Buddhism comes not only with the concept of God, it comes with the concept of a temple. The Taoists like the idea. Confucians like the idea. They begin to build temples, but what's the model?
Their influence could be seen everywhere as each tradition began to shape the physical and spiritual landscape of China. And amidst this world of competing beliefs, a monk named Liao Ren began to imagine something different. According to the legend, he dreamt of a sanctuary beyond the reach of the world, an isolated place lifted closer to the heavens. In his mind, this sanctuary would not stand on the ground at all. It would instead hang from the mountain itself. But for a dream like that, he first needed the right mountain.
But these are 5 peaks, roughly north, south, east, west, and center in China that supersede all other mountains. Mount Hung, which is where the Hanging Monastery is one of the March Mounts.
Compared to the others, Mount Hung was remote and quiet. But there was something else about this particular Mount Hung that made it the perfect choice. You see, the range itself sagged inward like an open shell. And this design gave the temple 2 critical protections. First, the summit above pushed outward like a massive umbrella. This caused the rainwater coming down to spill harmlessly in front of the cliff rather than soaking the face itself, a major advantage for the temple's preservation. Second, the placement of the cliff reduced direct sunlight. At midsummer, during the solstice, the temple sat in shade most of the day, receiving less than 4 hours of exposure. This natural shield kept the interior cool and slowed the decay of wood and paint. For Liao Ren's vision, this was the perfect location. But even with all its advantages, one problem remained. Traditional temples were built on flat ground with wide foundations sunk deep into the earth. Here, though, that isn't the case.
It's just topography. If you stand, the other mountains that I've mentioned have flat places on them. So you go up and then there's enough space to build something without tearing anything down. But this is it's like kind of a straight up peak on one side.
With no choice but to build on the cliff face, the question remained, how do you build a monastery that hangs from a mountain? Well, the answer was in this simple slab of wood. This right here would become their secret weapon against gravity itself. But before this plan could become a reality, the timber first had to be prepared. Craftsmen went into the forest to gather the wood, cutting down tall hemlock trees and shaping them into long beams. Once cut, the beams were soaked in tong yo. This is a type of oil that came from the nuts of tong trees, and it had a simple but powerful effect. The coating sealed the wood, making it resistant to water and slowed decay. The wood now became a material built to last, giving the Hanging Temple a real chance to survive for centuries. Now, with the beams ready, the ingenious construction could begin. But here's the thing. Building something to last for centuries is really about problem solving. And problem solving is exactly what Brilliant is built for. Brilliant helps you become a better thinker and problem solver with thousands of interactive lessons in math, science, programming, and data. Each course is designed so you're not just watching or memorizing. You're actually working through the ideas step by step. That's why it sticks. Brilliant science courses help you develop your scientific intuition through visual, interactive problem solving that gets you hands-on with key concepts. You'll learn to think like an engineer with lessons on electric and digital circuits, gear systems, physical structures, and more. It's the kind of approach that makes abstract concepts feel practical. You can try Brilliant for free right now. Just scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description. You'll also get a 20% off premium discount and annual membership. Big thanks to Brilliant for supporting our channel. Now, back to the Hanging Temple. To match Liao Ren's vision, the temple had to be built in the middle of the cliff face. Getting workers into that exact spot would be a challenge, and their solution was risky but straightforward. The men tied ropes around their waists and lowered themselves down the cliff. Hanging in mid-air, workers chipped out holes spaced evenly across the cliff face. This was dangerous work. One slip of the rope could have meant disaster for them. After that job was done, the beams were lowered one by one and pushed into place, wedging them into the stone. With enough beams set, they could finally lay planks across the tops. That created a narrow platform, barely wide enough for a few men, but it gave them their first working space on the cliff. From there, the process was repeated and a simple temple was built. Just a few small halls for worship, with space for monks and statues. From the outside, it looks like this design would keep the structure standing. But looks can be deceiving. Let's test it with a simple magnitude 5 earthquake. Yikes, that didn't look good. But why did the structure fail? For years, historians believed the beams were simply wedged into holes. And at first glance, it makes sense. A snug beam driven into the rock looks secure. But when an earthquake comes, it changes everything. When the ground begins to shake, the platform doesn't stay still. It shifts side to side, pulling against the beams. And over time, that motion would loosen the wood until the beams slid free. Even a modest quake could cause the entire platform to give way. And for centuries, no one questioned this assumption. It wasn't until the late 20th century that things changed. During repair work on the foundation, the hidden engineering was finally revealed, and it was genius. At the very end of each hole, they found the timber was cut with a narrow slit. Inside that slit was a small wedge, and when the beam had been hammered into place, the slit spread open and locked tightly against the rock, making it nearly impossible to move. No one expected such a clever trick. Today, we call this a dovetail joint, but during the 5th century, this tiny adjustment made a huge difference. So much so that now, when we run the simulation, the structure holds tightly. And with that, the question that puzzled so many was finally answered. In the centuries that followed the temple's construction, the temple held firm, gripping the mountain through storms, floods, and earthquakes. And it became a place where people of different faiths could gather and practice together. But the world below was far less stable. Regime change followed regime change. Wars broke out again and again, making the next 1,000 years one of the bloodiest and most turbulent eras in Chinese history. Through it all, the temple stayed in place, quietly clinging to the cliff. But by the 15th century, the Ming dynasty had taken power, and with their new rule came a new vision for the temple. The modest halls clinging to the cliff no longer fit the image they wanted to project. What they built was spectacular.
In this dynasty called Ming that begins in 1368 to 1644, at this location, and it's built as a spectacular monastery suspended in air.
To the Ming emperors, it needed to be larger and more impressive and worthy of their reign. It wouldn't just be a temple, but a complete guang, a monastic complex that would house multiple halls, each dedicated to different aspects of three traditions. The plan for the Ming expansion was ambitious, and they needed more room. So first they would extend the floor with 27 beams, laying planks across them to create a wide platform. On top of the base, the temple would take on a new form. Here's what they had in mind. At the center, a main hall would rise, 14.8 meters across and 4 meters high. To its side, a southern pavilion would stand 3 stories tall, 4 meters wide, and 8 meters long. Opposite it, a northern pavilion of the same height would stretch 7 meters in length. And at the top, the 2 pavilions would connect by a 10-meter bridge, while a stairway carved into the cliff would tie the lowest floors together. From end to end, the complex would run 32 meters in length, with 40 halls and rooms inside. This would no longer be a modest cliff shrine. It would be a full network of buildings. And with their plan set, construction could finally begin. Workers would begin with the framework. A base beam would be carved with trapezoid slots and an extruded top, and planks with matching ends would slide into place. This joint would stop the wood from twisting or slipping free. The technique they used was sophisticated.
Chinese timber framing is perfect wood joinery. The comparison that people make is barn construction.
When the ends of the planks connected to another beam, a square frame would appear. Now, if a pressure was applied to one beam, the force would spread across the entire frame until it canceled out from other ends. This meant the building would bend slightly under stress, but not collapse. And to make the 3-story pavilions, this could be repeated vertically as the new base beam would fit to the original like a Lego set. And with more layers stacked on top, the frames would grow upward into floors and walls. This would give the pavilions their traditional Chinese look, and attention could now be turned to the roof. But these wouldn't be just any roofs. As part of the Ming dynasty's plan, they wanted the sweeping Chinese profile with roof edges that stretched far beyond the walls, like the ones we see all around the world. And to make that possible, a special corner bracket had to be built. This was the gong, and it's one of the most sophisticated elements of traditional Chinese architecture. Here's how it was used. They'd start with a base, square block with special slots set on top of the column. This block would act as the focal point, carrying the entire load above it. Into its slots, the first arms would be placed. One would slide forward along the wall, another would run at a right angle, and the third would rest at 45 degrees along the hip, locking them all in place. Together, these 3 arms would spread the weight outward instead of forcing it straight down. A second set of blocks would be placed on top of the arms, each cut with precise slots for the next layer. This would allow new arms to fan out again, locking into the first tier. As you can see, this process can be repeated numerous times to achieve a more dramatic look. But in the case of the Hanging Temples, a simple build is what they were going after. Once complete, horizontal roof beams called purlins would stretch across the brackets. They would run along the edges and across the center, forming a sturdy grid. This grid would act as the skeleton of the roof. Rafters would then rest on the purlins, stepping upward to create the raised profile of the roofline. Next, wooden planks would cover the rafters, forming a solid deck. This layer tied the whole frame together. Over the planks, builders would spread a mixture of clay and lime, sealing the surface against wind and rain. And finally, rows of curved tiles would lock into place. In the end, two systems would hold the temple together. The frame would give it strength while still allowing it to flex, while the dogong brackets would spread the roof's load like an open flower. Together, they created a structure that was balanced and strong. The Ming builders also added a final feature to the platform. Vertical pillars were placed under the foundation beams to share the extra load created by larger crowds. These supports helped carry the stress of daily use, acting as a secondary reinforcement. Yet the foundation is so well designed that even without them, the temple would still remain standing. What set it apart, though, was not only the architecture, but its identity. The halls carried statues and inscriptions from Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism side by side. This blending of traditions made the temple valuable to every group. And in the centuries that followed, the Hanging Temple endured more severe storms, floods, and earthquakes. Dynasties rose and fell, but the temple remained in place. It stood as proof of a design both ingenious and astonishing. And today, the Hanging Temple is no longer just a monastery on a mountain. It is one of the wonders of the world. Thousands visit the temple to climb its walkways every day, and with that interest comes a new responsibility.
Living monastery means we still want to use it. 18th century, 19th century, 20th century, people are restoring constantly. That's one of the beauties of timber frame construction. This replaceability, this ability to replace, not just adaptability, Buddhist, Taoist, Confucian, whatever, Islamic. This ability to replace means if one bracket set is falling apart because there's been too much water damage or worm eaten or insect eaten, whatever, all that has to be replaced are the pieces of the bracket set, and people always keep extra pieces around, or there's a module. All Chinese timber framing is modular.
And for the temple to remain safe, some improvements had to be made. Back in 2015, the biggest concern was rockfall. Loose stone above the temple was starting to give way, so engineers stepped in. They cleared about 300 tons of rubble, put up a massive 2,800 square meter net to hold the cliff in place, and even built a reinforced wall as backup. By the time the temple reopened, the cliff was stable enough to carry the temple safely again. A few years later, in 2018, attention shifted to the building itself. Scaffolding went up from the bottom of the mountain all the way to the cliff, giving crews access to every corner. They repaired weathered wood pillars, refreshed the paint, and added more stabilization to keep the cliff from eroding. Access also has changed. In the Ming era, pilgrims could come and go as they pleased. Today, it's tightly managed. Only 3,200 tickets a day, no more than 80 people inside at once, and visitors move along a one-way path through the narrow corridors. It may feel strict, but it's what keeps the temple safe while still letting people experience it up close. So while the Hanging Temple still appears as it did centuries ago, its survival now depends on the same foundations that first held it to the cliff. But what makes the Hanging Temple timeless is more than its structure. It carries the spirit of Liao Ren's vision, the craft of the monks who first shaped it, and the commitment of generations who refused to let it fade.
It would be interesting. Maybe somebody will listen to this interview and go to China and take a look at it and think of a really interesting way to make some modern structure that references this. And I'll be interested to see it. Somebody wants to send it to me. I'd be very interested to see.
A huge thanks to Nancy Steinhardt for helping us understand how the Hanging Temple works. Her insight gave us the detail we needed to bring this story to life. Unfortunately, we had to cut down the full interview to fit this video. But if you want to watch the entire conversation and support what we're building, check out our Patreon. You'll also get early access to upcoming videos, our exclusive Discord community, and other benefits. The link is in the description. And if you're curious how this kind of engineering shows up in places like Rome, we've got a full breakdown of their genius aqueduct system. Click here to watch the next video.